Hi everyone, it's me Catherine, and today I'm here to bring you a spoiler-free review for Stepping on Roses by Rinko Ueda. This is a shoujo manga that I started many years ago. I want to say a lot of my time at university, like the things that I read at university, is sort of like blend over the 3-4 years that I was there. But most of my manga binging happened during like my first year of university, second year of university, so I want to say this is when I started this, and it was still updating at the time. I was reading the scanlation, so I was reading it on a website that, you know, people uploaded their scans that had been fan translated and cleaned up and all that. So yeah, I was reading it on there. Never got to finish it because I was reading it as it was updated, and I'm not sort of good at keeping up with things weekly like that because I tend to get bored, I tend to forget, and I tend to lose track of time, and it just ends up not being right. And equally with like fan translations, with the scanlations, because obviously they're only continued as long as someone is willing and has the time to put into doing them. So I never finished it. So when I was thinking about what to read for a manga vlog, I checked to see if it was on the Viz Media manga app that I use for reading things that aren't specifically Shonen Jump, and it was I couldn't remember the name of it. I never remember the name of it because it was a scanlation, so the titles tend to be in Japanese, so all I could remember that it was bara, which is roses, so I just remembered it was something to do with roses. I found it called Stepping on Roses, and I was like, you know what, we're gonna read this, because I remember it getting pretty wild, and boy did this go some places. So okay, so the story revolves around Sumi, who is living in poverty. It's set in the Meiji period of history in Japan. Can't speak to how accurate it is because I'm not an expert on that, but basically we're following Sumi, who is living in poverty with her older brother Eisuke, who has a horrible gambling problem, and also I think he's a host. Basically he goes around and like gets his money by dating and hanging out with older, not necessarily older, but other women, and he also has a habit of collecting orphan children to bring home for them, or for Sumi to look after, basically. So they have no money, their family keeps getting bigger because her stupid big brother keeps fetching things home, and eventually it gets bad that she doesn't have any money, she needs a doctor, and she decides to go sell herself, and she ends up with Soichiro, a rich young master who says they're going to get married. Basically he pays her money to marry him, gives her money to marry him so that she can send the money home to look after the kids. And yeah, he marries her because he has this big plan, because he in order to inherit his granddad's company and the riches, he needs to get married. So he grabs Sumi, cleans her up, they get married, and that's how it sort of starts off. And it turns out there's more going on behind the scenes, and he has other things that they're trying to do in order to like ensure that he continues to be able to, like, I think he runs I can't know if it's a bank he runs or something, I genuinely can't remember, but he has plans to like ruin opposition and like competing companies and things like that, and Sumi is basically stuck in the middle of this, whether she really wants to be there or not. So we have Sumi, our main female lead, we have Soichiro, our male lead, who is very hot and cold. Over the first few chapters you sort of get, he doesn't treat Sumi particularly well, but it's all part of a bigger plan, and because he's our main male lead, eventually obviously he falls in love with her, and you know, because she does her best to be his wife, and you know, it works out. And then we have our second male lead, Nozomu, who is Soichiro's, I don't know if they're childhood friends, they're old friends, but not really friends. They're not very, I don't know, they're friends, but you know, there's things going on that sort of makes you wonder how deep the friendship actually runs. And obviously in these things the second male lead always seems the better option, always seems nicer, kinder, more matched for Sumi, who is she's really kind, she's super selfless, and she's a little naive, I guess, but also she just really likes to help out and get on with people, and she's just a really genuinely decent person. So obviously that Soichiro can't help but fall in love with her, and she also attracts the attention of Nozomu. So we have a little love triangle, except it's not really, you know, it never is a love triangle. It's some sort of shape that has 3 points, but it's not necessarily a triangle because the sides aren't all there, you know what I mean. And the thing that I remember most about this and that I loved about this and why I wanted to go back, because I knew it was going to be so fucking messy, because Nozomu, not all is as it appears with that guy, and boy does he make some decisions. But yeah, so I guess it's sort of a classic rich guy, poor girl sort of partnership, and how they eventually go along and how she teaches him, you know, it's that sort of thing where she's teaching him how to, whether like not like physically, not like literally teaching him, but he learns from her, you know, to be a better person and what it actually means to connect with people and the best way to form relationships with people and build connections with people, because she ends up getting a lot of help for him simply just by being a decent person. She plays shogi with a lot of them. She, you know, she hangs out with their kids when they're not having such a great time, and she just generally shows herself to be a good person, and that's how she doesn't do it for with any ulterior motive. She just simply does it to be a decent person, and it brings people to her. And I guess Soichiro sort of learns things along the way through that, and a lot of things happen between them, and I'm not gonna say it's good, but it's definitely, I had a great time reading it. The only thing is Sumi, I think you have to you'd have to just forget how old she is, because I think it's only mentioned early on. It's very easy to forget, but I think she's only 16, and there is quite a bit, I will say, content warning, there is quite a bit of sexual assault. I'm talking early 2010s that I read this, so fairly recent but not super recent, so definitely, I mean, it shouldn't have flown then, but it definitely wouldn't fly now. But yeah, casual bits of sexual assault, because they just can't help themselves with her. And there is implied / referenced sexual activity. I do not believe it's graphic. I don't think it can be graphic for it to be considered shoujo, but it is implied, it is referenced, and there is definitely, but it gets wild. You keep an eye on Nozomu, because that man. But yeah, so I think it's obviously at its heart is a shoujo romance, so that's the bit that we're focusing on, the relationship between Sumi and Soichiro, and then also Nozomu in there, and about, I say, teaching Soichiro kindness. I don't think Soichiro was ever a bad person. He just did what he had to protect himself, and it's not an excuse, obviously, for the way he treats people and for the things he was going to do, but I mean, like, inherently I'm just saying he's not a bad person. It's just that he was doing things badly, and he did treat Sumi awfully in order to enact some plans that he had. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. But it's if you're not after something like perfect, if you just want messy shoujo romance, this is absolutely it. And honestly, overall, like, well, obviously it's you know, like, kindness over everything else, nobody, I feel like, maybe I'm just forgetting, no one ever actually suffers any lasting consequences to their actions. I didn't read this thinking it was going to be the best shoujo manga I'd ever read. I read this knowing it was going to be messy. I read this knowing the drama was going to be so over the top. I read this knowing that it was not going to be super satisfying in certain ways. So I wasn't reading it for like super complex characters. I wasn't reading it for the prolonged character development, because I feel like that was very lacking in this, because I feel like the main person to go through any character development is Soichiro. And he does, but I feel like there's nothing very gradual about it. It just sort of happens. It's not a super, in my opinion, not a super interesting journey that he goes on. It's a very obvious journey that he goes on. Rich guy falling for a poor girl, and they sort of like, you've had this story before, it's nothing new. But it's very messy, and I love it. I genuinely enjoyed it. It was a great time. And the ending, it was just, no one really suffered any lasting consequences for their actions that I can recall. And I wouldn't say the actual, like, well, it's a shoujo manga, the plot is the romance, so it's a time. If you're looking for a messy time, and you can, when I started this I realised how young she was, I was like, ooh, I feel like I'm going to have to just forget how old she is in order to be able to read this. So thankfully this wasn't something that they reiterated over and over again. That wasn't like, oh hey, remember she's only this years old, because that would have made it a less fun time, I think, for me. Yeah, so if you can just sort of like glaze over that and just forget how old she is, because ultimately her age doesn't really matter to the plot. It's not important, it doesn't mean anything. It's just, I guess, how old they decided to make the character. They could have made her older and it would have been literally nothing would have changed except you would have feel less uncomfortable. So there is that. So just bear that in mind. There's just Puvra stepping on roses. Like, please come and talk to me. And if you're interested in watching my manga vlog, go watch that as well, because ooh, it was a time, but it was exactly what I wanted. So yeah, so that's Stepping on Roses by Rinko Ueda. If you love messy shoujo, would recommend. Just content warning, just please remember they treat the sexual assault that is treated so casually. It is just sort of brushed off as, oh, I just can't help myself, I can't stop, I have to have you. But the one time the sex happens, it is consensual. A little hurried, but it is consensual, because she's worried that if she doesn't have sex with who she wants to have sex with, she may not get that choice. Which sounds awful, because it is awful. So there is that. Just please bear that in mind when you go in. But there it is, Stepping on Roses by Rinko Ueda. Yeah, exactly what I needed. A messy shoujo romance that made me uncomfortable in places, but overall was a fun, messy time. So thank you so much for watching. Do let me know in the comments below if you've read Stepping on Roses, because I'd be very interested to see who's read this and what your thoughts are, because and if you have any more messy shoujo manga recommendations, I would love them, So what have I got coming up for the rest of the week? So on Friday, I've checked my schedule, Friday we will have the Stepping on Roses manga reading vlog, so full of all my spoilery thoughts while I go through the journey of actually reading it, will be up on Friday. And as always, on Sunday will be the next episode of my Hollow Knight Let's Play. But until then, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day wherever you are, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye bye!